Introduction. I am humbled. Thank you. I can go from. Yeah, thank you very much. As announced, I would like to talk about a specific topic today: Krishna and Maitra Karuna. What these words exactly mean, I will put also on the board so that you have a better visualization. But I would also like to put this in the context of the Bhagavad Gita and start the lecture by reading a verse from the Bhagavad Gita with you. Do we have any new-timers here? No. Okay. So the very first time in the Hare Krishna temple or in this temple?
In the Hare Krishna temple.
Ah, hello.
Different ashrams and also I'm familiar with the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, so you're not a newcomer to Bhagavad Gita, but a newcomer to the Hare Krishna environment. So, very welcome. Hello. And you?
My first time. I've been to temples, but not ISKCON temple, and
Okay.
I've been here at all. So this is my first time.
So, very welcome to you too. Wonderful that you're here. If you noticed, I wanted to keep this a little more interactive than usual lectures. So if you notice that I go off board and I become a little too specific in the Krishna conscious philosophy, then raise your hand. Please ask questions. Okay, I don't want to just put this at the end of the class, but please go right in the middle. Okay. So we always start our readings from the Holy Scriptures with a invocation, would you say, of Vishnu. It's called Om Namo, which Om is you all know this. So we start with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Then I will read the verse and read the purport from Srila Prabhupada. And then we are going to have a discussion on the two words. And hopefully, it will become clear what these two words mean for devotees and mean for the process of Bhakti Yoga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Qualities. A devotee, somebody engaged in Bhakti, should actually have or develop. No? Depends on where you are on this process. And he starts to tell them, starting from verse 13 to 14. And I will read these now, and then read the translation and the purport, and then we are going to discuss we're going to discuss the content. Adveshta sarva bhuthanam Maitra Karuna evacha Nirmamo nirahankaraha Samadukhka sukha kshami Santushta sadatang yogi Yathatma hridanischayah Mayarpita mano buddhir Yumat bhaktaha same priyaha. One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. And the last line, yo mat bhaktaha same priyaha. Yaha, that is he, who. Mat bhaktaha, mat means mine, and bhaktaha is the bhakta, the devotee. Sa, he, me priyaha, it's very dear to me. Which I just love these verses because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was once asked, how can I see God? And his answer was, do something that God wants to see you. So here we have a formula for how to become dear to Krishna, right? So, and when we are dear to him, then the hope is that he wants to see us. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Coming again to the point of pure devotional service, the Lord is describing the transcendental qualifications of a pure devotee in these 2 verses. A pure devotee is never disturbed in any circumstances, nor is he envious of anyone, nor does a devotee become his enemy's enemy. He thinks, this person is acting as my enemy due to my own past misdeeds, so that it is better to suffer than to protest. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.8 it is stated, Tate nukampam susamikshamano bunjana evatma kritam vipakam. Anybody the rest of the verse? Anyway, whenever a devotee is in distress or has, this is one of the most famous verses, and it.
The rest? Kannst du den Rest noch vorlesen?
Der wird hier nicht
Ach so.
Nee. Tatenu kampam sushamikshama no bunjana evat makitam vipakam. No, I also forgot.
I thought it was written there.
Nee. It ends with sadaya bhak. I hope. Whenever a devotee is in distress or has fallen into difficulty, he thinks that it is the Lord's mercy upon him. He thinks, thanks to my past misdeeds, I should suffer far, far greater than I'm suffering now. So it is by the mercy of the Lord that I'm not getting all the punishment I'm due. I'm just getting a little by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is always calm, quiet, and patient, despite many distressful conditions. A devotee is always kind to everyone, even to his enemies. Nirmama means that a devotee does not attach much importance to the pains and trouble of pertaining to the body, because he knows perfectly well that he is not the material body. He does not identify with the body. Therefore, he is freed from the conception of false ego and is equipoised in happiness and distress. He is tolerant and he is satisfied with whatever comes by the grace of the Supreme Lord. He does not endeavor much to achieve something with great difficulty. Therefore, he is always joyful. He is a completely perfect mystic because he is fixed in the instructions received from the spiritual master. And because the senses are controlled, he is determined. He is not swayed by false arguments, because no one can lead him from the fixed determination of devotional service. He is fully conscious that Krishna is the eternal Lord, so no one can disturb him. All these qualifications enable him to fix his mind and intelligence entirely on the Supreme Lord. Such a standard of devotional service is undoubtedly very rare, but a devotee becomes situated in that stage by following the regulative principles of devotional service. Furthermore, the Lord says that such a devotee is very dear to him, for the Lord is always pleased with all his activities in full Krishna consciousness. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gananjala Shalakaya Chakshurunmidham Vinay Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Brindabe Radhe Vandaveshwari Rishabhanu Sateri Panamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpararupyascha Kripa Sindhupya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanipyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Yeah, the verse actually tells us that, and Prabhupada explains this very, very nicely in the purport, that devotees have certain qualities, pure devotees. And yes, he says that undoubtedly it is very rare that persons have these developed in full. But as persons progress, you can also have these qualities which we just heard about. You can also have them in small qualities, right? And then develop further. So because sometimes, well, let's be honest, the standards of devotion that Prabhupada has showed us are sometimes feel a little impossible high for an individual, especially at the beginning. But the beauty about these qualities is that even at a minute quality, they are good for ourselves, they are good for the process, and they are good for the whole of humanity. And that is a wonderful thing about these qualities. And well, I have been thinking quite a lot about Maitra Karuna. Actually, I written my PhD thesis on empathy and leadership. And during the research, I came on a lot of studies which are from the Buddhist-inspired scientists, researchers. And they, because Maitra Karuna, these two words are not only accepted in the Vaishnava tradition as very important, also the Buddhist place a lot of importance on these. Maitra, the Buddhists speak of the Brahma Virahas, which are 4, and 2 of them are Maitra and Karuna, which we just learned from this verse. The others are Upeksha, which means that you are tolerant, and I forgot the Sanskrit word for the other, but it basically means that you are joyous with other people, that you feel joy when others feel joy. Upadita. Anyway, this is not a Buddhist class. So we are talking about these 2 words now, these 2 qualities. I mean, all the other 2 qualities are equally important, don't get me wrong. And let's not forget it started with adveshta, not being envious, as the basis. But I thought I wanted to go a little bit into detail of Maitra and Karuna. And now probably Maitra and Karuna, Maitra and Karuna are 2 Sanskrit words, of course. And this does not work, of course. So the first one is Maitra. We have a few people of Indian origin here. Any idea where this word comes from? Maitra. What is the root? Mitra. Yes, exactly. Maitra comes from Mitra. It is a flexed form, a vriddhi form. And what means Mitra? The friend, exactly. Also in Bengali? Yes? Yeah, I read it in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It is also quite often used as friend. Mitra is the friend. And then Maitri as eine gebeugte Form, as a vriddhi form.
Decline.
As a decline form would mean, any ideas?
Friendship.
Friendship, yes. It can mean something like friendship, benevolence, when you turn the A into a long I. So it is an attitude of friendliness toward others. And then we have the second word was Karuna. Karuna. Any idea where this comes from? Compassion, yes. So let me write the translation here. Friendliness. And it's always a little difficult to translate these words, to find a proper English equivalent. But I think compassion, that it's a good translation, right? Yeah. It's closest, yes. You might have come across the word Karuna in the invocations that I chanted after reading the purport, as is customary in our tradition. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu. Yes. because Krishna, he is also named as an ocean of karuna, an ocean of compassion. And the thing is that very often I come across places, not very often, but the two words, Maitra and Karuna, are very often placed together. Very often they are part of compositum as a suitcase word, porto. Oh no, not sure. Compositum, I think that word is also in English, right? Compositum, yes. When you put two words together, and very often we can find Maitra and Karuna together, which is very interesting because it reflects very nicely the wisdom of the whole concept that is behind that. And sorry. Because, Karuna, and I found this very interesting from my worldly research I did on these two words, because from what we learn from psychology is that the two go together very nicely. Compassion, sometimes from a worldly point of view, has also a downside. Any ideas how this could be? What could be the downside of empathy or compassion?
When the other person takes advantage of it.
That can happen too. Yes, that can happen too. Although that would not really be so much the concern of a devotee, because devotees should not be cheated. Prabhupada was always very you can be cheated out of your private money. There's no loss. Being poor is not hindering your Krishna conscious progress, but being cheated out of Krishna's money, that should not happen.
It can create proud in the one. Like, I'm very compassionate.
That is a very good point. Yes. Yeah. How did I call it in English? Like a certain smudgeness of people. That can happen. That can happen. Yeah.
Sometimes, like, if we get so much compassionate, so we get lost in the the sadness of other people, and we may forget the devotion.
That is a very good point. Compassion is because you wanted to say? Okay.
Attachment? That's the word.
Attachment, yes. That can also happen, yeah. Yeah. Proud, there's always, if you do good stuff, then there's always the snare that you feel, oh, I'm such a sattvic person, I'm so good, I'm so pious. And actually, people like that become sometimes a little unbearable, although undoubtedly they're doing good to the world. But what you said, that is very true. When we go forward and perceive the sufferings of others, that has an effect on ourselves too. It can cause what we know from research as compassion fatigue. That happens to a lot of people that perceive suffering on a daily basis. Nurses, psychologists who treat other people, teachers in schools, in poor districts, police people, emergency firefighters who are there when people are suffering, people working in old age homes. That can happen, or if you have a loved one that is suffering very intensely. Parents, we all get into the age where we have to bury our parents at some point, and those who have loved their parents, for them it's a hard time to see them dying, right? So that is something that can cause compassion fatigue, because we see the suffering, and yes, theoretically, we are understanding it is just the material body, it is just the mind and everything, but nevertheless, we Most of us are not on the transcendental plane that we can see how the soul is not affected. We see the person suffering. We have not that full understanding of the separation of the body and the soul. And also we have a duty to take care of people who are close to us. So compassion fatigue can happen. And persons, ironically, those who have a lot of compassion are those who are most prone to compassion fatigue. And that can sometimes lead to a hardening of the heart. And the hardening of a heart actually then is not very conducive to the devotional service, is detrimental. Now, the beautiful thing is that Maitra, and these insights we owe to Tanya Singer and her research group. She was at the Max Planck Institute. She was a very, apart from being a world-renowned scientist, she was also a Buddhist. And so she studied Buddhist monks who do Maitra meditations on increasing the feeling of friendliness toward other beings. And this friendliness actually, and that I found wonderful, this friendliness we feel among others, that protects us from the compassion fatigue. It is like a balm that, sometimes you have a cough and you drink a syrup some sort of, take some sweet-like medicine which acts like as a balm, and your throat is not itching anymore. Maitra acts in the same way and protects us from this compassion fatigue. So coupling those together, the compassion and the friendliness, that is actually a wonderful thing. That works wonders. And we get very clear directions from Bhagavad Gita who to direct this friendliness towards. Because as human beings, unfortunately, the bad news is always human beings are racist, they're sexist, they look out for themselves, and if things turn out well, they care for those with whom they are blood related. That is unfortunately the state of the affairs. There have been a lot of movements around the world to actually turn human beings into something better. They have worked, if you look at the state of the world, they did not overly work well, but we do not lose hope that things go better. So there's a very human, animal-like tendency to only be friendly towards those with whom you are blood related. That is, and empathy, compassion you have with those you are blood related. If you want anything more, you kind of have to enter a spiritual process, which helps you to understand actually there's not that much difference between you and me and this. And that is basically what Bhagavad Gita is trying to teach us. Bhagavad Gita is trying to elevate us from the place where we feel compassion only for those with whom we are blood related, to a place where we feel compassion with every living entity. It says Sarva Bhutanam. It doesn't say Sarva Germany, Sarva Hindu, Sarva Hindunam, or Sarva this and that. It says Sarva Bhutanam. Therefore, anybody who Bhutanam, Bhuta is a living being. So anything that has life, you're supposed to see with an equal eye. No? There are so many beautiful verses in Bhagavad Gita, like what was it in the 5th chapter where it says the dog and the dog eater. What was it? Sorry.
I just know the end.
Yeah, genau, that verse. Anyway, we are all, nobody doubts me that this verse is in here, right?
We have full faith.
here. Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavi Hastini Shunichaiva Shvapakicha Pandita Samadarshinaha. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, seeth with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater. So that is the Samadarshina, the equal vision, which people try to develop, and it pains me greatly that sometimes I was in India last week, and a colleague of mine has been in Delhi when there was a religious tumult, and actually people who called themselves Hindus were raiding Muslim houses, dragging them on the streets and beating them to death in front of their families. And this is nothing ever anybody... Sorry? No, I did not see, and it was not yesterday. It was 2-3 years ago.
Okay,
but she was really traumatized by that.
Yeah, of course.
And the thing is, you can never. I mean, this is one of the greatest mysteries that people who claim to follow Bhagavad Gita, or who claim to follow Jesus Christ, actually can commit crimes like that. Although Bhagavad Gita says very clearly you should see everybody with an equal eye and be friendly to everybody. And Jesus also never said make any distinctions between anybody and show the other cheek if somebody attacks you. But people manage to do that. However, that is not the business of a Vaishnava. Yeah?
Yeah, this one point, like the people do all this thing, they never read Bhagavad Gita. So that's the problem.
Well, they read, but they haven't understood and they don't follow, right?
Personally, I know many Hindus, though they don't know what Bhagavad Gita is all about. So even my siblings, they don't know what is Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
So it's the fact, basically, in India.
I know it's unfortunately happening everywhere. That there are so many wonderful books out there that people claim to follow but never really follow. Same with the Quran. Same with the Bible. But that we can count ourselves lucky that with Srila Prabhupada we have somebody who gives us a very good access to Bhagavad Gita, and also has made it clear that Bhagavad Gita is not just something, an old book lying around, but something that is very alive and should be followed every single day. And Maitra Karuna are these qualities that we can actually start to develop every day. And Maitra Karuna has always two directions, so to speak. Sometimes, and I was so kindly introduced as somebody who joined the Hare Krishna movement in the 90s. And yes, in the 90s we had a little bit of a different mood. It was very outwardly. It was very much, we have to spread this as a revolutionary movement. Better within the next 2-3 years and not waiting so long. Now devotees have matured in Germany quite to a great degree, and we also understand it is not only outward, we also have to fight the battle within ourselves. Like I also studied a little bit of Islam, and the true jihad happens in yourself. The true jihad happens when you try to fight the nafs, the false ego actually. There are some similarities, interestingly, between Sufism and Bhakti Yoga. So the true, first, we develop these qualities, and that will make us a lot more attractive to people, because as Prabhupada never tired to stress, somebody who has developed these qualities will be instantly likable by everybody. Mm-hmm. Everybody will like them. They might not always agree with you, but at least they like you. They might not always treat you nicely. Mm-hmm. We know what they did to Haridas Thakur, but they liked him. And in the end pardoned him. Now, Maitra Karuna, we find these two words at also other in other places. For example, we find them in the instructions of Kapila, Lord Kapila, an incarnation of Krishna, where he in Canto 3, chapter 27, verse 8, where Kapila Muni, when he instructs his own mother, Devahuti, says, "For his income a devotee should be satisfied with what he earns without great difficulty. He should not eat more than what is necessary. He should live in a secluded place and always be thoughtful, peaceful, friendly, compassionate and self-realized. Maitra Karuna Atmavan." And we also have again a mention of Maitra Karuna in this pairing in the 11th canto, in Krishna's instructions to Uddhava, canto 11, chapter 12, in the verses 29 to 33, where they also come as in these exact pairs, Maitra Karunikaha, and the translator choose to translate Maitra here as never cheating anyone, which is and thus a true friend. So that was I forgot who translated the 11th canto. Anybody knows? Sorry? Hridaya Govinda. Exactly. Yeah. Would be nice to ask him what was his why he went for never cheating anybody. But a true friend that we know doesn't cheat you, right? A true friend has some uncomfortable truth sometimes, but a true friend never cheats. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also we have a placement of these two words. They are a little different. So here in Adilida 4:15 to 16, it is said, "Prema rasa niyasa karite ashvadhana raga marga bhakti loke karite pracharana rasika sikara Krishna parama karuna e dui hitu haite ichara udgama." Krishna is described here. The Lord's desire to appear was born from two reasons. The Lord wanted to taste the sweet essence of the mellows of love of God, and he wanted to propagate devotional service in the world on the platform of spontaneous attraction. Thus, he is known as supremely jubilant and as the most merciful of all. So we have Parama Karuna, the most merciful, as in translation by Srila Prabhupada, alternative translation of Karuna. So not only compassionate, but also merciful. And I don't know if you have. I always, when I thought and reflected on these two words, I try to think of instances where Krishna actually showed this behavior. Now, this is a verse explaining why Lord Chaitanya came, and of course he came as Parama Karuna, as the most merciful, because he introduced the process of chanting Hare Krishna as a supreme process for getting deliverance and devotion to Krishna. But also we find other instances where Maitra Karuna played, played a role. For example, I always like to remember the story of the Sudama Brahmana from the Krishna book. Anybody remembers that?
Was it banana fields? Or?
No, not banana fields.
But this would be also...
Banana leaf seller, I think he was. No.
No, that was a different. You can with Sudama Vipra. The thing was, Sudama Vipra was a poor Brahmana. He was very devoted to Krishna, very devoted, and he was Krishna's classmate. He was sorry.
Was it chipped rice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He was Krishna's classmate when Krishna, to give an example to the whole world, actually attended Gurukul, and when he went to the ashrama of Sandipani Muni, and yes, so the two boys were together in that ashrama and had many pastimes, like they almost got lost in the woods during a thunderstorm, and Sandipani Muni was worried out of his mind that the two boys got drowned. But then after after Gurukul was finished, Krishna turned to being, to do his business on earth, while Sanibhani Muni got married and with his wife lived a life of simple poverty. And both, they did not have very much. Krishna, Prabhupada described it like they both were very emaciated, very thin, had dirty clothes, which I would say in this regard means there were stains that couldn't get out, but they were washed, of course. But in the sense that, rich people, when there's a stain, they throw away and buy something new. Poor people just will have to wear it, although there's a little stain on it. So at one point, Sudama's wife thought, yes, we live and we are happy, but Sudama, my dear husband, Krishna is your acquaintance, and yes, I know you don't want to go there, you don't want to ask him, but as grihastas we cannot really go on like that. And Sudama she wasn't pestering him or anything. They seemed to have a very nice relationship, those two. But then Sudama agreed, thinking, okay, it gives me a chance to see Krishna again. So this is wonderful. So he went to Krishna, and the only thing that his wife could pack for him as a present to Krishna was this chipped rice. And chipped rice is actually that which is left when you, the good rice you sell to people who have money, and that which is left is a chipped rice, which does not really hold in high esteem. You would not really offer that to Jagannath if you have something else. But then again, it's Krishna, and it was offered with love and devotion by Sudama. And Krishna treated him so nicely, and I always love those passages also in Bhagavad Gita and in Srimad Bhagavatam where Krishna sits on the bed with somebody. So he invited Sudama right beside him on the bed, on his bedstead. Now we have to understand that in royalties, for them the bed was like a public place. Actually, I read something that royal persons, their bedroom was a little different from normal people's bedroom. So they received visitors also in the bedroom. But still, it was very intimate. Also, Arjuna, when Arjuna saw the universal form, he also said to Krishna, I cannot believe that we actually, we sat on the bed together, and you are that, you are God, and I sat with you on the bed. And Sudama Brahmana also, he felt very shy, but then Krishna actually took his hand, and they sat together, holding hands on the bed, and Sudama didn't say anything. But Krishna, since he is Karuna Sindhu, he knew the predicaments that he is in. And he accepted the rice. He took a morsel. I don't know how much a morsel is, but it's maybe a little bite, right? Prabhupada loves the word morsel, which has gone a little out of fashion, I think, now, since the last 100 years. So, but a morsel is maybe what you can fit in the palm, right? Yeah. So he took a little bit of that chipped rice, ate it. He wanted to take a second bite, and then Rukmini stopped. You know what? that is, you have fed the entire universe by that morsel. Don't eat anything more. Otherwise, I don't know. Everybody will get sick in the entire universe and the entire creation. So that's enough. And then Sudama didn't think of anything. He came back to his village, and he didn't recognize anything anymore. It was all, his wife was very opulent, had nice clothes, wasn't looking emaciated anymore. So he had all the riches, all the opulences happen to him. And yes, we can also get other understandings from Srimad Bhagavatam. Look at what happened to Devahuti. She also got, when she, she also lived in a palace, but she didn't care for that because she got instructed in the same way. And also Sudama Brahmana, he didn't care for the riches. He and his wife stayed fixed in Krishna consciousness. But Krishna gave an example of Maitra Karuna. He acted friendly towards Sudama, and he relieved him of his troubles. And that is also that we see with devotees. If you worship Krishna for the material benefit, that is the wrong way. But if you worship Krishna, you will also not be the most poorest of all paupers. Devotees as a general have not done extremely well in this world. if you have come, if that is the reason why you've come to the temple, then there are other temples who focus more on this material side. But what I found very interesting is that Krishna also promises my devotee shall never perish, and there is that material side to that too, and that is something that I personally would like to explore more. The side, what happens to us when we pursue those Vaishnava qualities. Because these Vaishnava qualities are not only dear to Krishna, they will make us dear to other persons, and they also protect us from a psychological point of view. Psychological research has given us very conclusively, I mean, of course, there are always different opinions, right? You know this. But there's a whole body of research that has shown us that that developing these qualities does something to our psyche. It helps us. It protects us from the hardships of this material world. Karuna, actually, if you develop Karuna, I mean, don't develop Karuna just for that, but if you develop compassion, you will see a reduction in your heart pressure. You will see an increase in white stem cell, not stem cells, in white, white cells. How do you call it? Sorry?
White blood cells.
White blood cells. Thank you very much. So nurses who have undergone a Maitra Karuna meditation for an extended period of time. It's not enough to do this once. You have to do it for an extended period of time, 6 weeks or something. They felt sick considerably less in comparison to the control group, and they just did memory trainings. No? And then the research group said, actually, we find it unethical not to give the control group a Maitra Karuna training because it has such good effects. So they also gave that to them, because just having a good memory is very nice, especially in Krishna consciousness. There are so many wonderful verses to remember by heart. And but it doesn't have the effect that Maitra Karuna has. Also, if you look at all the other qualities from with a material eye, let's do that for 1 second. Adveshta, non-enviousness. Wouldn't that be wonderful if you and I were not envious of anybody anymore? That would protect us from so many bad thoughts, negative thoughts. And there's also a whole section of psychology, the positive psychology, that focuses on the merits of cultivating good thoughts. One of the names was Barbara Fredrickson, for example, and one of her theories, I hope that still stands, right? The broaden and build theory. She had because my research is 5 years old, and you never know. And she has proclaimed that if you harbor positive thoughts, that broadens your perspective. No? When you become envious of persons, when you become unfriendly, when you have that village thinking, these are my brother relatives and they should prosper, these are my enemies and God strike them. Yeah? That is narrowing your consciousness. Positive thoughts broaden it. And also, the other part is to build. Positive thoughts you can build up. It builds up. No, you have these positive emotions and you build up on them, and they are very good for your stress experience as well. So we live in a world where everybody is constantly stressed. Constantly, and that seems to be something that most of us living in a metropolitan life, living a professional life share, that there's too much work, too little time, and life is very stressful. Getting children educated and to the point where they are self-sufficient is extremely stressful. All of that is very stressful, and here we have a process which can protect us from that. Now, as a Hare Krishna, we don't like to stress that. We like to stress, we do this actually to get the mercy of Guru Gauranga, of becoming dear to Krishna, and maybe more important, of becoming dear to Radharani. Because Gaudiya Vaishnavas are actually all about Radharani and getting her mercy to serve Krishna. That is a goal. But as we have seen with Sudama Vipra, why not enjoy the spoils that come along with this process and experience them consciously? No? And no, we should not stress that, but we should keep in mind that following this process will actually help us also in a material way. We don't, if we do our chanting, if we follow the process, we don't actually need to go to wellness retreats. We should go to retreats and get ourselves out of the rat race if we are in that from time to time. But it's enough that we immerse ourselves in the Krishna consciousness, and if we are among those who are expert and can accomplish what Martin Luther has called to be in the world but not of the world, because we are protected by Krishna consciousness, then that is a beautiful thing. Now, of course, it would be nice if we also have some Hare Krishna studies on how the process works on a material plane, because the spiritual we cannot measure. And hopefully sometime the sociologist and psychologist in Krishna consciousness will together and do the two, have our own research studies. Until that time, we can rest assured that this works. And I would like to ask you if you also have a nice Maitra Karuna story from the Shastras, or maybe from your own experience that you would like to share with the congregation, with the plenum, people in here. Can you remember a nice story? Something like that, but it can also be from your personal life or from another tradition, as you like.
Yeah, like in the fourth canto, so like Dhruva Maharaj, his stepmother, so basically like even though she was against him,
yeah,
and after he performed his austerities for 6 months, and she also came to welcome him. And so Dhruva Maharaj welcomed her with very compassionate, with respect. So that would be one of the examples.
So Dhruva Maharaj welcomed her. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, yeah?
Yeah.
Dhruva Maharaj dealings with...
stepmother, Suruchi.
Jai. Yeah. Thank you very much.
She was the one who offended him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Ah, she was the one. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, when he was child, he wanted to sit on his father's lap. So she offended him by, if you want to sit on his lap, so you have to take birth. You die first, and you take birth from my womb. Then
Oh. Okay.
So then,
Yeah.
his real mother said, "Okay, the real compassionate is Krishna, or Vishnu. So you just go and perform austerities." And then he met Narad Muni, and then he did austerities, and he saw Narayan.
That is a beautiful story. And he forgave his...
No, later on he got a kingdom better than Brahma. So
Yes, Dhruvaloka. Yeah. Very good example of how a devotee actually... he then experienced Maitra Karuna for his stepmother and showed that. Yeah. Yeah?
So it's like Lord Nityananda, when he made Jagai and Madhai, they
Yes.
throw him the the pot, but even if he was bleeding, he was thinking how to liberate them.
Yes, yes. That is a wonderful example, Jaga and Madai. Exactly. Jaga and Madai, right? Yeah, very good example of how they acted very aggressively towards Lord Nityananda. But he acted as Prabhupada has, probably Prabhupada also had Lord Nityananda in his mind when he wrote the purport, that even if you're put in a difficult situation, this embodiment of Maitra Karuna, which of course Lord Nityananda is, he was not disturbed by that, right? He took it equipoised and they received his blessings. Yeah. Other examples? Yeah?
Lord Chaitanya blessed King Tataparutra. So first he said, I'm a sannyasi, I can have nothing to do with the king. And then, then when the king became very humble in a humble dress and also sweep the street before the Ratha Yatra, did such low services.
Yeah.
And the Lord Chaitanya got him the vision that Lord Chaitanya was visible in 7 different kirtan groups. So he got the mercy through this.
Very good example, yeah.
Also simultaneously.
No, Pata Parudra. I hope this is... Sorry?
Haridas Thakur was beating on the places.
Ah, yes.
He has no fear to these people.
Yeah, Haridas Thakur was beaten in 21 marketplaces, right? Because actually Haridas Thakur came, he was from the Muslim community, but then when he met Lord Chaitanya and his devotees, he started to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. He actually became the Namacharya, the example for chanting the holy name in perfection. But then the Muslim rulers in Bengal at that time, they didn't take that lightly, because falling away from Islam is considered, a punishable offense by death. So he was beaten in 21 marketplaces. But Haridas Thakur endured all of that without without envy, without animosity towards his perpetrators, understanding Tatenu Kampam Susamikshama, these are the past deeds, I have to endure them. And liberation is eternally mine. Yeah.
And bro, I just wanted to add, like, when they were beating Haridas Thakur, that time, like, they were so angry. Those people who were hitting Haridas Thakur, and they were telling, like, we have beat you so many places, you should have died. If you don't die, then the king will then punish us and our families. Then he was so compassionate, they said, okay, then I die. And he literally died that moment.
Yeah.
So then they throw him, like, then the Muslims said, no, he chanted Hare Krishna, so we don't want to, like, bury him. And the Hindus said, oh no, he's Muslim, so we cannot cremate him. So what do? We throw him. So then they throw him literally on the Ganges, and then his body was floating from one side to the another side. His body went to the another side, and he wake up again, and he started chanting again Hare Krishna and walking by. So
Haribol. That is a wonderful story. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So I think maybe you can help me if it's Rishabh or Dave or not, but the story from the Bhagavatam, there's this avatar of Krishna, and he has a wound, and worms are in the wound, and they're eating something's flesh, and then the worm falls off, and he picks up the worm and puts it back so it can continue eating and it's not hungry. Okay, maybe I mixed it up.
This is Sanatana story.
No,
Not
Sanatana.
Sanatana, it was someone else. Not Sanatana.
Yeah.
So why would an avatar have a wound?
Rishabh doesn't have this. Like
Okay.
he went on like Vanprastha and sannyas.
Yeah, yeah.
Then he was walking naked and like this. That is the difference.
Yeah, okay. So Sanatana.
But there's the story of King Shibali from the Bhagavatam, which I remember now. King Shibali was a pure devotee, and he saw a pigeon being attacked by an eagle, right?
Yeah.
So he felt very compassionate, Karuna, for the pigeon, and he told the eagle, "You don't eat the pigeon. You take a little bit of my flesh." So then he invited the eagle to actually eat from his own arm, rather than having the pigeon killed. That is, of course, an extreme example, but we read it in the Bhagavatam to actually get into the spirit of Maitra Karuna. And it is also a very good example of extending Maitra Karuna to all living entities. No? King Shibali was not just extending it to, people with a very small heart. They extend Maitra Karuna only to their blood relatives. Actually, if they have the smallest of our hearts, they only care for themselves. The little wider circle is you care for your immediate offspring. A little wider circle you carry for your other relatives. You carry for your neighborhood. You care for your country, and but then by chanting and by following a spiritual process, we are able to make the circles bigger and bigger and bigger until all living entities are in there. And that is, we have these wonderful stories from Srimad Bhagavatam Chaitanya Charitamrita that tell us how different saints and were able to actually make these circles bigger and bigger and bigger, and fight this parochial attitude of only my bloodkin, nobody else counts. Anything else? Yeah?
The example of Yudhishthir, how even though going through a lot of suffering, he didn't show any negativity towards
Yes. That is, yes. In Mahabharata, we have the example of Yudhishthira. Is that? Oh. We have the example of Yudhishthira, who was put into great difficulties by his cousins, his very cousins, but he had no animosity towards them. He was not going on the dark side. No? We all know people who have wronged us, right? Is there anybody in this room who has not been wronged by somebody else? Okay, we all have been wronged, right? And sometimes, for example, when I was studying, when I moved out of the temple and ended my brahmachari life and to study, in university they had a complot against me because I wanted to work in the university, and somebody actually blackmailed me behind the back of my professor. Some person told my professor that I said this and that, and then my professor, she was not of the purest character, I have to say. She made people close to suicide. Yeah, she was. And but then I got her full vengeance, and it took me a long years to actually forgive that, right? But that is something that when we are not advanced, we have to forgive our wrongdoers. And Yudhishthira, the Mahabharata is so full of how Yudhishthira never took offense from his cousins, right? He was never vindictful. Also Arjuna, same applies for him. When it came to the battle in Kurukshetra, he didn't want to fight them. He was not saying, now comes time where, I put an arrow in their heads for all they have done to me, He was saying, no, Krishna, I don't want to fight. Shingara fell, his bow, which he was so expert in using, fell to the ground. Krishna didn't have the kindest of words for that kind of behavior, because he said, you're a warrior, you have to fight, that is your duty, but he didn't want to, no? Yeah, Yudhishthira is a very good example of, yeah? Oh, no, it was your turn, sorry.
And Kanakadasa, who belongs to Shudra community, and he was not allowed to go inside the temple.
Yeah,
And then once, like, he was being beaten by the priest community and all the other people, and he was not at all supposed to enter the gate of the temple in Udupi, Sri Krishna temple in Udupi. And
Yeah.
then once, by the Karuna of Sri Krishna, the idol of Sri Krishna was turned to the other side, and the small window was open there, and he gave his darshan to the Kanakadas.
Kanakadas. Thank you. And where do we find the story?
Basically, we heard it from schools and
Ah.
my place, yeah.
And Kanakadas, yeah?
Kanakadas.
And in which area of India?
Udupi.
In Udupi. Ah. Thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah, there are very many wonderful pastimes with the deities.
Even the temple is still like that. The god is in
Yes.
facing absolutely opposite side. Generally the gods are supposed to be facing
Yes,
in
yes.
one direction, but
Yeah.
in that particular temple, the god is facing completely in opposite direction, and there is
Yeah.
window also. It's like
So what Moshi is being worshipped there? Lord Krishna, yes.
Yeah. There is the window is called Kindi. So Kanakindi is famous in Udupi Sri Krishna temple.
Well, thank you very much. That's a wonderful story.
Even when we go there, we get a chance to take darshan from the Kanakindi.
From the Karnataka. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. You? Yeah?
Like the relation between Lord Ram and his stepmother Kekai, I think.
Yeah.
Because like she was the one who like preferred his son to be the king and made this plan to send Lord Ram for 14 years to the Banvas, and
Yes.
after coming back, like he had first his stepmother Kekai and afterwards his real mother. So
Yeah.
to show the
Even Bharat was like unhappy with the decision of Kekai, so Lord Rama has to explain him why decision was taken. And says it's our duty to respect the decision of our parents.
Yeah.
So Lord Rama has to explain the Bharata in all the complete story and tell him it's not just about the decision, it's about the love and compassion parents have towards us. We need to respect that decision. You cannot speak to a mother like that, you cannot be angry to a mother like that.
Yeah.
So that teaching has been given to by Lord Ram to his brother.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah?
So my example is of Draupadi, who showed once the natural this compassion and friendliness towards Krishna. Like Krishna got bleeding on his hand, and she immediately, out of panic, tore her dress, the royal dress, and tied the finger because she was in pain to see the Krishna.
Yeah.
Compassion and friendliness. And we all know how then Krishna reciprocated that small piece of cloth back.
Yes, how did he reciprocate?
When the Draupadi was being disrobed in the assembly of
Yes.
then
Yeah.
it was not like, I think it was one piece of the sari, and the reciprocation was, I think, thousands of saris back.
Thousands of saris, yes. Yeah. Huh. Thank you for the example. Yes. She showed compassion to Krishna, which as devotees we can also do, right? That is the beautiful thing about Bhakti Yoga, that compassion goes two ways, right? It's not, yes, Krishna is Karuna Sindhu, but we as devotees, very often we think, Lord Jagannath, Baladev Subhadra, for example, they get little blankets when it's cold outside. So because as pujaris, sometimes we worry that Krishna might get cold or he might get hungry. And then we feed Krishna, we clothe Krishna, and we treat him like somebody that needs to be taken care of, that needs to be the subject of compassion, which is so wonderful. I mean, yes, we understand. Of course, we understand. This is a system that is training us to be Maitra and to be friendly and compassionate. That is why Krishna set up the process of Pancharatrika Pancharatrika Vidhi, to train us to become spiritual beings. Of course, that is the theoretical understanding. The practical understanding is that you can actually train on Krishna how to be compassionate. And the reciprocation is always there. Maybe not with saris, but in so many other ways. But I forgot there's a story before that. I always thought that it is when she shouted "Hey Govinda" or "Hey," what should she said "Hey Krishna," right? Hey Govinda. Hey Govinda, yeah. That then she supplied. But thank you. Yeah.
There's also a story from Ram Lila when Bibhishan, the brother of Ravana, came to Lord Ram and wanted to surrender to him. Although he was a Rakshasa, he wanted to surrender to Ram. And all the monkeys said, "Oh no, he is a spy, let's kill him immediately." And everybody said, "Oh, he must be killed immediately."
Yeah.
Ram said, "Oh no, he wants to surrender," and someone surrenders and says, "Then I will give him always courage." He accepted Bibhishan as a devotee.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's also good meditation for us that we not judge others.
Yeah, yeah.
They look like a Rakshasa. They can be a nice devotee.
So Ram and what was the name of the?
Bibhishan.
Bibhishan, yes, Bibhishan, of course.
And he was the brother of Ravana.
I don't know if I got the spelling right, but we get the idea. Yeah. Bibhishana, yeah. Yes, exactly. That's a wonderful story. That's a wonderful instance of... and yeah, you perfectly versed that. Somebody might appear like a Rakshasa, but if that person surrenders, then we have to treat that person as a devotee. Yeah. Yeah?
So
after
after the Govardhan Lila, when Indra realized what he had done, and he wanted to apologize to Krishna that he tried to destroy Vrindavan, he came and he was lying down on the floor before Krishna, and Krishna picked him up. And that was the beginning of Krishna's mercy, that he was picking him up and said, "No, don't worry, it's fine."
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Krishna and Indra after Govardhan Lila. Yeah, that is a wonderful example too, that yes, Indra, I mean, in a sense, the whole Govardhan Lila had many purposes. One was to put Indra in his proper place, and that is also Krishna's mercy, to teach him a lesson. But on the other hand, he did not want him to be humiliated longer than necessary, and he picked him up and installed him in the proper place again, right? I mean, that is something that also the devotees have learned over the years, that, the putting a person into place, yes, that is something that the spiritual master does, but it is something that devotees among each other should really avoid unless they are in a position to do so. Yeah, but Krishna did this to Indra, and Indra learned a great deal. Yeah. Yeah?
There is one story between Lord Sri Ram and Shabari, where Shabari was from low caste and Sri Ram is of course the king. So Shabari was waiting for Lord Ram to see him to take his blessings, and then when Lord Sri Ram was searching for Sita, he went to her hut. And then she found that maybe Lord Sri Ram would be hungry, so she eats the fruit and checks if it's sweet, and then she offers that to Sri Ram, and then Sri Ram eats that. Lakshmana was shocked by seeing this thing, like how can he eat the leftover of Shabari, but then eaten one.
She ate the bhoga and then offered to Ram. So it's like this.
To make sure the fruit is sweet, that.
Yeah. What was the name? Ram and
Shabari.
Ram and.
Yeah, some sweets are some of the fruits are very sweet and some they're very, very sour.
Yeah.
He had to taste
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, I remember the story. As Pujari, sometimes sometimes you also have doubts whether that what we offer is actually, or you know that part of the Krishna process is that you offer the food that you cook at home, and very often you think, okay, did I put the salt in? Yes, no. But we are not at Shivari's position, and so most people play it safe and not taste before they offer. But yes, there are also other instances of people who actually offered, or Satchidananda Swami, when the people from the Indian Embassy were here last time. That was a private program we did for them. And he told a wonderful story of a very poor woman in Jagannath Puri who actually, you know the story? Yeah? Who actually also offered Krishna from her own pot, more or less, Lord Jagannath. But Lord Jagannath accepted this. Sorry?
That is like a stick actually. Those
Yes.
we used to for brushing it, we used to use like that stick.
Yeah.
Stick, neem stick, we used to shave it and we used to clean it. So we used to stir the khichdi time, and then with that only she used to offer. This story also where Jagannath says that once upon a time this is not the kheer which she made it. Actually she was like sick maybe, so some other person made behalf of her. So Jagannath says it's not the taste which I daily eat it. I like the same taste which she uses. So that's something that shows the compassion and love.
The compassion and love, but also the amount of bhakti people have, and that is actually the only thing that Krishna accepts. All the other stuff is not that attractive to him. So still, we keep the standards because until we have so much bhakti, then we keep the standards to play it safe. Yeah. One more example, and yes.
In Maharashtra, there is one devotee of Lord Vithala. His name is Saint Tukaram.
Tukaram, yes.
And there was a shortage of food in his village, and he literally gave all the raw materials from his house to all the people. And at the end, he left with nothing for his family, but he shows the karuna for his other devotees.
Yeah. That is a very good example. Yeah. Sometimes. Sometimes we have in the Krishna conscious movement there have been a lot of discussions on what actually is the subject matter of Maitra Karuna. Should we do we also help people materially, or do we just help them spiritually, or to what where ends the extent of Maitra Karuna? You all know that, I don't know if you know that, but in the Krishna conscious movement, and that was already in Prabhupada times, when the Krishna conscious movement became more and more successful, there was of course more and more money that was invested in books and temples basically, but then also they started the Food for Life program to give back, to extend Maitra Karuna also to people who do not have enough to eat, and offering them Krishna Prasadam as a bridge between Krishna Prasadam also nurtures the body very nicely, because many people in the Bhakta program, when they go there physically, actually gain a few pounds. That is an effect that happens to a lot of devotees when they join the temple, for example, or get into Krishna consciousness, because Prabhupada once says we are eating religion. Although that is also not done in such extent anymore, but still, so these aspects are also there. People who are suffering extremely on the material plane will not have the mental capacities to actually pursue spiritual life. That you can only do when you are somewhat healthy enough. Like a week ago, I saw a wonderful lecture from Vrindavan Devi Dasi, who is a Prabhupada disciple, and she lives as Vanaprastha in Vrindavan for many, many years now. And she kind of, she was citing a prayer by Satchidananda Swami, I remember now, so she could have spoken about Satchidananda Swami. That the prayer was like, well, Lord, please, make sure, not like exactly praying for health, but in a sense that I'm healthy enough to do service. I mean, that is enough for most devotees, to be healthy enough. And health, as we know, well-being has a material side to it, concerning the body and the function, as well as a mental side to it. And both, if you're mentally ill or if you're bodily ill, then serving properly in Krishna consciousness is not really possible. And so that is also a place where Maitra Karuna is very important, to actually care for those who are not in the position to serve Krishna and bring them to the plane and combine both. Although I have to say that our brothers and sisters in the Christian traditions actually have placed a lot of importance on that. Not so much as has been done. All the attempts to have a Krishna conscious hospital have not really been very successful so far. A devotee wanted to start a Krishna conscious old age care center in the area of Golokadam, of Abenteuer, but that has not really happened, so has not really taken off, so to speak. Which for this movement is also a problem, because devotees are getting older and older, and many devotees have had to go into retirement homes that are not exactly devotee friendly. So that is also an area where Maitra Karuna will become very important. How to take care of elderly devotees in a proper fashion. That needs to be solved. Yeah? So I would like to wrap it up. We have talked about Bhagavad Gita 12, 13 to 14. I will repeat the verse again. Adveshta sarva bhutanam Maitra Karuna evacha nirma munidhankaraha samaduhka sugha kshami santushta satatam yogi yathatma dradhanishchayaha maryapita manobudhir yomat bhakta same priyaha. One who is not envious but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. So we discussed this verse. Then from this verse we picked two, from the entire verse we picked two words. We spoke about Maitra and Karuna, and tried to go a little bit in depth. Maitra meaning friendliness, benevolence, or the Buddhists call it loving kindness, by the way, which I find a wonderful translation of Maitri, or then even Maitra, loving kindness, because it transports very nicely. And I think we can also adopt this translation, because when Krishna says Maitri or Maitra, he shows really loving kindness to Sudam and to the wonderful people. And we talked about Karuna, the compassion. On the one hand, the compassion of the Krishna conscious person who shows compassion on in a sense that he tries to deliver the person, he tries to assist the person in getting Radharani's and Krishna's mercy, but also as Karuna in a sense of being compassionate to a people suffering on the material plane. And then you all supplied very nice examples of Maitra Karuna in the Shastras or in Udupi, which I found very endearing. Thank you very much for that. Before we close that, maybe you can also think of how to extend. I did not touch that point, but Maitra Karuna is also something you should treat yourself with, right? Because loving kindness, some people forget that loving kindness has also the inner direction. No? The Buddhists even say if you don't love yourself, if you don't have Maitra and Karuna for yourself, then you will not be able to have that for others. And sometimes people give themselves up for others too easily without understanding, you are part and parcel of Krishna too, Your body has been supplied by material nature, which we have a somewhat ambivalent relationship, but we are grateful for having this body. So we should also treat ourselves as Maitra Karuna, just like everybody else. Not more, but also not less, right? So it also had that dimension. And then it's always an opportunity to think, how much have I actually developed that myself? Where do I stand in regard to developing those qualities? And what can I do to develop them more? That is something that I would invite you to take home as a thought and maybe form a conviction of that is an area where I can actually become more compassionate towards others or towards myself, more friendly. Any comments or suggestions from your side?
So first of all, I would like to thank Bhava Sindhu Prabhu for giving such a friendly and a compassionate class and showing Karuna to all the fallen souls. So let's thank him by loudly chanting 3 times. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
So we'll take some questions. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand and I'll just pass on the mic.
So my question is about how Maitri helped in compassion fatigue. So I didn't understand exactly how can be more friendly can help with compassion and draining.
Thank you very much. I have not stressed so much on that. The thing is that it's a very interesting point. Actually, that is happening in your psyche. Basically, when our brain has been constructed in such a way that when you perceive suffering, actually that suffering that I see becomes suffering in myself. I have so-called mirror neurons in my brain that actually respond to the sufferings of others. Miraculously, the human beings have been geared from Maitra Karuna. Our brains have been constructed in such a way. Actually, we have been constructed for that. But we are being perverted by so many selfish thoughts later on that actually gets lost. But if you want to raise children, if you want to raise offspring, you of course have to know what they're feeling. Otherwise, how could you be a parent if you don't have an understanding how your child feels? That is when we foster loving kindness, when we foster Maitra, this feeling of friendliness, actually it shifts, and Tanya Singer and her team were able to show this also with using fMRIs, these, I don't know how you say that in English, resonance. MRI, something similar in MRI. So you can actually see that if you cultivate the Maitra attitude of friendly, loving kindness to others, then actually you respond in a different way. You do not suffer with the person. That is, you stop suffering with the person. You become their well-wisher, and this well-wishing actually activates positive emotions in you, because well-wishing is a positive emotion, and that positive emotion has all the positive effects that you have. So having when I read this, I thought, wow, that is all the prayers that you say for other people, they're actually also good for yourself. Now, that does not mean that we should pray selfishly for others, but it's good to know that praying for others, wishing others well, actually helps yourself too, in a way. So you do not become affected by the pain, but actually you experience positive emotion. Yeah.
Great answer. Hare Krishna, thank you for the wonderful lecture. I have a kind of like a practical question, and it happened yesterday. So the neighbor who lives downstairs to me, like directly, and he lives with his mother, and the mother is really old. So he complained quite a few times that we make some noise, maybe like walking or like falling something, and it makes a huge sound for them. So a lot of time police came, and so many things happened. So then I talked with my flatmate, and then we decided we used to wear slippers at home, so we skip those things. We became more cautious that we don't close the door randomly like that. Yesterday, around night 10:30, I was working. I have to finish my thesis. I was writing, and my flatmate, he was cooking in the kitchen. And that time, the neighbor, he rang the bell. I opened the door. I said him Guten Tag, and he just shouted with me for 5 to 7 consecutive minutes. Like I couldn't say him anything. And it was everything in German, and I understood the whole part, and there was a lot of bad words in that. And one part of time, I said to myself, like, that is enough. I can't take any more from you. And he came. He was so aggressive. Like he showed a pose like he's going to hit me. Like the situation went to like that. And then I had no option. I had to close the door on his face. I had to do that. And before doing that, I told him I'm gonna bring my phone and I'm gonna record it how you are behaving with me, and then I am gonna talk with you. And then he went away from he was moving backward too. But the thing is, as soon as that incident happened, I couldn't work anymore. Everything went down. My whole consciousness, I thought, I tried to calm down myself. I chanted some rounds. I went to the balcony. I tried to do something, but nothing helped me. And one part of time, what you were saying, Arjuna, that revenge. He didn't thought about revenge, But for me, I was thinking for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, how can I take revenge? Maybe I will make some more noise. I'm confessing it. So Prabhu, the thing is, after you talked about this Maitra and Karuna, my question would be right now, at this, on that moment of time, what I should have done differently, so I am not affected by his emotions, and I am also protecting myself, not becoming angry and wasted my a whole night yesterday, whole night. I just simply wasted. Yeah, I can say that.
I mean, first of all, it's very natural the way you act, right? That happens to all of us. And yes, these negative emotions have a way of poisoning us. Emotions are very nice, and in Bhakti Yoga we try to yoke ourselves to the positive emotions. That could be another full lecture on how we evoke positive emotions in Bhakti Yoga. And you tried that, and that will win. You will win over the negative emotions. First of all, they subside. Negative emotions are like a tornado; they come and then they go. But it takes time. The psychologists call this a refractory period when we are affected by those emotions. And you were not angry yourself, but by seeing somebody else, yes, you were affected. You were an empathic person, and of course you were affected by that. And then closing the door and getting out of the scene, that was the best thing you could have done. You know, talking with an angry person who's going to be attack you, you have every right to get away from the situation. So you did this very nicely. What you can do actually, and I mean, I've thought long and very long about that. What the Buddhists would suggest would be to let loving kindness stream to that person from you. So, and that actually worked. I was in 2016, 2017. I was in a very difficult situation because my mother was on her deathbed. I was in a big fight with my family at that time, with my former wife, and it was not a pleasant time. And then actually I got into this. I started to cultivate because these loving kindness meditations are very nice in cultivating the spirit. And when we combine this with Krishna consciousness, actually this works very nicely. That you first of all you try to get in a good mood, in a good devotional mood by thinking about a person actually from whom you have received a lot. No? Meditate on a person for whom you feel this loving kindness. No? And then by meditating on how you do that, you're filled with that positive emotion. And then you think of your neighbor and you extend that to your neighbor, And that will change. It will really change. The adverse feelings that you have for your neighbor will change if you actually behave in such a way,
Actually, I can help because I was that neighbor who was yelling in one of the incidents, and someone closed the door on me. So, I mean, I can basically the thing is that empathy couldn't help you because really that person was suffering. I can tell. Mm-hmm. Some people are very sensitive to sound, and in Germany we have the wooden floors. And his mother is also, let's say, old. Yeah. So if someone is suffering and sensitive to sound, it can be nightmare for him. Imagine he would be suffering for 1 hour and then he's coming to you. Mm-hmm. So maybe start with showing that you are really, because you were not loud. I know, because I know that my neighbor was not loud and I was yelling at him. He closed the door on my face. So. And now I understand how much he suffered after I yelled at him.
One way to take revenge is you can go to their door and shout 5 to 7 minutes in Bengali.
No, we
just kidding.
Funny people like you start singing Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in front of them. Maybe.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, when the person has calmed down. Yes. There are many ways.
Maha Mantra, maybe.
Yes.
I have a question same reference with my story. Like the Saint Tukaram, he gave the raw food to the people, but at the end he showed the positiveness to the other people, but for his family it's a negative point. Like they didn't live with the food, so they were blaming them why you gave the food to the other people. So is there a limit to show the karuna?
I mean that is a wonderful remark, and the limit is your own spiritual progress and a realistic understanding of that. I think that is the bottom line here, to realistically know where do I stand, because if you always do too much and that doesn't correspond to your level of enlightenment, of your level of bhakti, then it is first of all not sustainable, second of all it is artificial. So the examples of Tukaram, of Haridas Thakur, of Jesus Christ are very great examples of people who sacrifice themselves. And we have these examples to aspire after them, no? But and also it's always it's a good topic, you know. In the Christian tradition, you talk about imitatio Christi, not just going into the going to church on Christmas, but to actually follow in the footsteps of Jesus Christ. And actually, Imitatio Christi is a book written by a monk in Belgium, and actually it was widely read in India, in Rishikesh. Many people know this. Many yogis have read the book, more than in the West. I was surprised. But how far do we go with imitatio, right? We also are imitatio Prabhupada. We want to imitate Prabhupada, no? But then how far can we go in the imitation, right? Luckily, Prabhupada gave us an example that is not that impossible to follow, in a sense that he gave us the example of having his nice family life until he was 55 and then retiring. So I'm 50 now. I'm 51. So 4 more years, and then I will have to follow Prabhupada's example if I want to be a Prabhupada Nuga. But these are examples that should keep us thinking, right? But imitating artificially that Karuna, maybe we start. I mean, Bhakti Yoga is a gradual process, right? So we start extending our Karuna gradually, and you grow with that, right? And by sharing Krishna consciousness with others, that is a wonderful way of showing Karuna, and you do not ruin yourself right away. Yeah. And later on, I mean, as you know, if you give a donation and you regret it, that was there's a full what chapter is it? 13th, right? Yes. No. 17th, thank you very much. And in the 17th chapter, the different forms of sacrifice, tapasya, and donations are described. And then, and Karuna, if you give everything away and then you think, oh God, what have I done? Then that is in the mode of, what was it, passion. But, I mean, you've done it. And some devotees, when I was a brahmachari, I have to admit that I gave away everything, and when I started my family life, sometimes I thought, some of the savings would have been handy right now. But Krishna provided. I mean, it took a few years, but the money came back from other sources, so that taught me a lesson not to worry so much about that. But yes, yeah. Did this answer you? Maybe somebody else has a thought about that, because this is a subject matter of great importance and great difficulty. Yeah.
Just a short remark. You said imitating Jesus Christ or imitating Srila Prabhupada. We say normally we don't imitate, but we follow the great souls.
Yeah.
So we cannot imitate them, but we follow. This can help.
Yeah, following and imitating there, we can make a difference there. Yes. So a following Tukaram would be to be compassionate and also give donations and not maybe give away everything. And if you do, check with your family first. But then nobody starved, right? I mean, that is the other part of the story. Sometimes, if you do like Drupadi and put your heirs in.
When you stop the Krishna to eat the bad rice.
Yeah. Sorry?
In another story, you said that Rukmini stopped to Lord Krishna to eat the bad rice.
Well, I mean, Sudam and his wife were blessed so much already, more blessings would not have been possible. So one morsel was enough. More was not possible, more blessings. This one morsel gave all the blessings that anybody needs. And Sudam had all the blessings anyway in the first place. I mean, he was blessed by having Krishna's association. So, yeah. Thank you for the great question.
Any last question? Anybody else?
But I think the wife of Krishna didn't stop him to eat so that the blessing stops, but because she was in love with Krishna, that he should not be eating such rice.
Rukmini?
Right? This would be her love towards Krishna, that blessing should not be increased for Sudama.
Well, I mean, Prabhupada describes it like that in the Krishna book, that Rukmini thought that, everybody is fed in the universe already, Just more, I do not know. Yeah?
It's a little different from the subject that we're already talking about, this particular question. Earlier you mentioned Maitra meditation from the Buddhist faith to protect yourself from being affected too much if you're compassionate. And I was just wondering, is there any other way, because I'm not aware of the Maitra meditation, how to do it, but is there anything else that can be done to kind of protect yourself at the same time, but also be able to be compassionate with others without getting affected?
I mean, I'm firmly convinced, well, in the Hare Krishna tradition, that is a subject matter where I think it is, we can also go left and right and let us inspire by other traditions. But I also firmly believe that if we understand it, I mean, Krishna consciousness has different ways to reach you, right? So we have the intellectual plane, and as said in Bhagavad Gita, and the intellectual plane will help us because we understand the mechanics and the inner workings of how how that works, how the suffering of the other person is actually temporary, how the soul is never touched. And that in itself has great healing power. That understanding, I remember when I first came in contact with belief, with praying to God, and with the understanding that the soul is eternal. I had a wonderful religious studies teacher in first grade in school, and that understanding that the soul is eternal, that in itself is so healing, because you understand that whatever miseries you have, they are always ephemeral. They're never eternal. You don't have to suffer eternally. You just suffer temporary. So that understanding itself, that is protecting you from the compassion fatigue. And then also the compassionate prayer for others. We don't stress this very often in Krishna consciousness, but that is part of the tradition as well, to include others in the prayers, to include others, to become their well-wisher, to chant a Hare Krishna round for them, to bring them prasadam, to do something for their soul, for their understanding, to reach out to them from that spiritually as well as bodily, and that action itself, that other directed action, that will itself protect you from the compassion fatigue. And it gets you into a more agentic spirit. I'm doing something. I know this person is suffering materially, but I'm doing something for the person spiritually. And that in itself has healing power. Yeah?
Thank you, Prabhuji, for the big session on question and answer. So we'll have Gaur Aarti now.